the one I was looking for, but I'll use it. In Mosiah chapter 21, verse 16, short verse, but one that I think is interesting. It says, and this is some of the comings and goings of the Nephites when they were in bondage to the Lamanites, etc. It says, and it came to pass that they began to prosper by degrees in the land, and began to raise grain more abundantly in flocks and herds, that they did not suffer with hunger. Now, that scripture hopefully doesn't apply to us, that we're not having to raise grain to eat. Not that farming isn't great, but if that's your thing, great. But most of us probably aren't going to go grow a wheat crop and then harvest it for bread, etc. But I think the interesting thing is that if you look at that scripture, the Lord often blesses us by degrees. What we would want, my own hand raised, is we want a miracle, we want it now, and we want it on our terms. Am I warm with that? At least that's my frailty. Scott's nodding vigorously. At least that's what I find myself doing. When I was laid off about a year ago, more or less a year ago, whatever it was, hey, I need a job, need it today. 6 months later, that miracle came, and the prospering came by degrees. But I think a lot of times in our life when we ask for blessings or seek favors from Heavenly Father, we get impatient. But the Lord often, just like he did the Nephites in that example, prospers us by degrees. So the reason I like that is I think it's a great thing for us to do, and most of us probably don't do this very often. I'd like to liken it to hiking. Anybody in here a hiker? Enjoy hiking? Okay. Occasionally, not a big deal for you guys then, apparently. But when you hike, one of the favorite things to do is stop, turn around, see how far you've climbed. You then realize that all that effort has been worthwhile. And I think that same thing applies to the scripture and to our lives, is that, President Hinckley often used the phrase, and it's still used a lot today in the church, is it's steady upward progress. We don't realize that the Lord is blessing us all the time, and every now and then it's important to stop, turn around, and say, what was I doing 5 years from now? And am I in better shape? Am I more spiritual? Is my life better? Is it not? But I think most of the time, if we're honest with ourselves, we can see the Lord prospering us by degrees, rather than the Red Sea was parted. Moses had a need that was met, but most of us don't have that Red Sea part. Sometimes we do, but most of the time I think he prospers us by degrees. Any thoughts? Agree? Disagree? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, B, and then Scott.
It kind of goes along the line of line upon line, precept upon precept. I found it interesting that even Satan seemed to decrease by degree with successive mistakes. He seemed to decrease. All
right, interesting thought. Scott, go ahead.
Well, speaking for myself, I think it takes the distance of time often to see what prospering we've had, and in the midst of it, we're too close to it, and I'm too stupid to see it right off the bat. I'm not attuned to it enough, and then way down the road, I'll look back and go, nothing to me really. And so, my impatience sometimes punishes me for not being a little more observant.
Well, by the way, before you're too hard on yourself, welcome to the human race. Because I guarantee that you're not the only one. I'll speak for myself, but that's a normal thing for me, is that, I want it and I want it now, and it's righteous, so I must be able to be entitled to it. So good thoughts. Thank you. Anybody else? Thoughts on that one?
Well, I think with that, just because it's a righteous desire doesn't mean that you should get it right then. And another important thing is we should always be, on that steady upward course, looking for the future, instead of, oh, well, this kind of dropped into my lap. I haven't done anything to prepare for it, so I need it right now. Sometimes things take time to develop, and we're not ready for those things. And it's because we're not ready for those things that we're not blessed with what we see as our need. So the Lord is building us up to where we can have that need and use it correctly. And that's why it takes those couple months to, couple years to get what we think we need.
Okay. Very good, Soren. Thank you. I think that's very well spoken. So anyway, when you look at that scripture, I think that applies in lots of ways. And for those of us, including myself, that tend to be impatient and tend not to look back and see what the Lord has given us, not to look back and go back to old ways, but look back and see that as we've worked and He's blessed us and carried us, we are often far more blessed than we think we are. So I hope that's a thought that's worth having, and I say that tonight in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. I love tonight's discussion. So we're talking about what?
Safety and motivation.
Okay. Now it's a little bit of an interesting combination. Now I will fully admit, and you guys have seen my biases, is that safety is important, but motivation is, I love the concept of human motivation. So we're going to take a minute, because if we don't talk about safety now, it's not going to happen. We'll get stuck on motivation and we'll never come back to it, to safety. So let me ask this, has anybody, and I hope this is not a painful thing, has anyone had a family member or a friend or acquaintance or associate that was injured at work?
I have.
Okay. All right. Soren, was that you speaking?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And again, if this is not too painful, we'd love to hear some examples. Anything you want to share on that, Soren?
Well, my dad actually runs a specialty construction business. So I've seen very many workplace issues just because, we're trying to get something done. We're trying to meet a deadline, just trying to do something quickly. And you think you're firing on all cylinders and everybody's on the same page, but sometimes it just doesn't work that way. And I guess the one that comes to mind the most is we work with lots of heavy equipment, and my dad unhooked a big old long heavy, pretty much a logging chain that was overhead, and I was in the swing path of that chain.
Ouch.
So luckily I didn't get clobbered with the chain, but the stupid little pin that holds the hook onto the chain cut me right across my nose. And so, like I said, luckily it wasn't, horrible. I've had lots of bumps and bruises, but that one was most memorable because we were working in sync. We were being safe. We were taking all the proper precautions to keep ourselves safe, but because he was just that split second ahead of me, I got a nice little scar on my nose now.
Yep.
So,
and as you said, all precautions were being taken. And all right, very good. Any other examples? Thank you for sharing that one, Soren.
So my guys drive all day. They go to people's houses and to job sites. And in the last 2.5 years, we've had 2 car accidents.
Okay.
The first one was pretty serious. I mean, no real injuries, but yeah, it was pretty bad.
Okay. And, for those that drive for a living, and by the way, driving is the most hazardous. If you look at total numbers, people that drive for a living, truck drivers, taxi, like you're talking about, and you name it, it's one of, if not the most dangerous occupations, because accidents happen when you're driving, and it can be their fault, it cannot be their fault, etc. Any other examples?
My brother's little friend, my little brother's friend, also worked in construction, and I'm not sure exactly what happened. He was trying to free a machine, and he actually got caught up in it and died. So.
Okay. Absolutely. There are way too many workplace deaths that happen. The ones and I'll go back just briefly, and I'll leave the companies out of this because it doesn't really matter. One of my companies, a semi-truck driver that was 1 mile from our office where he would have been done for the day, fell asleep ran over the back of a car, killed all the occupants in it, 3 or 4 people. When I worked for another that wasn't a construction company, that was a food company. And then the one I can remember pretty vividly is we had an employee that was working with asphalt, and a piece of asphalt broke and crushed his foot. And if you've never seen a crushed foot, it's not a pretty sight. And it took him months to recover. And thankfully, he didn't lose his foot. That was a real possibility. One of the other ones that's a big deal that is really life-altering that people don't even think about is ladder safety. So many people that do work are on. Scott, am I hitting a chord there?
Keep going.
All right. Ladders are really dangerous. Just picture, maybe you already have pictured that, Scott. I picture someone missing one step on a ladder. So they're coming down a ladder, they think one foot's ahead of the other, and it isn't. They miss one step and fall. I've seen lots of injuries from that, and certainly either items that hit people when they're on a ladder, or you try to have tools on a ladder that you shouldn't have. You name it. Now, you can't laugh like that and not share with us, Scott. So,
well, I wonder how many people can do what I can do and actually was trained to do, which is to be able to be on the top of a ladder and walk it across the floor. And if I couldn't do that, when I first started in the trade that I'm in, if you couldn't do that, you weren't going to last on the job, because it was like, no, don't get down off that ladder. Just walk it over to where you need to get to. So I'm actually quite adroit at that. The modern electricians don't understand it when I'm telling them about that. Of course, we don't.
And I hope you don't practice that anymore.
No, well, not at work.
All right. Please don't hurt yourself while you're going to this class, because I don't want to have to say I told you so.
Construction safety is a big deal. What's that?
Or is that? What kind of ladder can you walk across the floor?
Well, they're usually wooden ladders, from a 6 to 8 to 10.
Like the A-frame step
ladder. Yeah.
I think you have a student that wants to learn that.
I have to paint my house, so that would be nice.
Here's the thing, that when you learn how to do it, it's remarkable how fast you can move across a floor.
It's kind of like stilts, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's really pretty amazing how quickly you can move.
Yeah.
And you never stand above that one step that says "Do not stand above," right?
Oh no, never done that.
Yeah, I have a couple of those stories too.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing I'd like to look at is that, in all seriousness, people come to work and expect to go home safe. Now, depending on the trade, depending on the skill, and again, it can happen in an office. I've had a couple of times where someone tripped over a desk chair and broke their leg. And no, that's not a joke. It's happened, and I've seen it, and we took them to the hospital and the whole bit. So it doesn't matter if you're on a construction site. Now, certainly there are times and jobs that are far more dangerous than others. But the thing I wanted to make sure we looked at is that when it comes to safety, it is real. And people die on the job. The example that we heard of the friend, and then again, remind me your name one more time, Cody, because I know it's not Cody, but.
All right, it's Bridget.
Thank you, Bridget. I'll get it again. One of these days I'll get it right. That Bridget reminded us of, those are real, they happen. You can get your glove stuck in something, which pulls your hand in, which pulls your arm in, and you're done. And it can be a gruesome and tragic thing. So the one thing I want to make sure we don't do is gloss over this. If you're an HR person, safety is a big deal. Whether it's a tweak that costs the company a lot of money because you have to have an MRI and physical therapy and things like that, all the way to a life-changing injury, it's just not good. And if anybody thinks that you're living the high life because you have somebody paying your salary for the rest of your days because you got injured, has never seen that. That never turns out good. It's never positive, and it can be just devastating to families. I've seen it turn awful immediately. So just keep those things in mind. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just very sobering when something does happen and you realize how lax you have become on the job. You know, like I said, my dad does a construction, so we work around heavy machinery and a whole bunch of other stuff. And we were actually working with a manufactured home, and he was jacking it up, and it was kind of a muddy day, and Jack slipped out, and the whole house fell on him. Luckily, you know, something was there, caught it, but you know, it took him, you know, 6 to 8 months to recover, and that's his source of income. So
yeah, absolutely. And again, the things I'd have you guys think about, one is very basic safety things are often the ones that prevent it. Safety glasses, reflective vests if you're in a place where you need visibility, gloves, the right tools, sharp tools, not dull or broken tools, using the right tool for the right job. The safety glasses come to mind in one of my previous experiences. We had an employee that was working on vehicles. He was a mechanic, an engine was running, a belt broke, came out, went right across here. The safety glass literally not only saved his eye, it probably saved his life, because he had a gash from that belt across his face, a nasty scar, but he recovered just fine. But without that, he'd have had no eye left. And it's just, you have to make sure you use the right equipment. So that's one thing. The second thing is you have to have safe practices. Scott gave us an example of what not to do, and you know, there's plenty. Thank you for that, but there's plenty of others.
I can give you more.
Oh, you know what? I think we could probably spend all night on this topic. So, you know, safe practices like, okay, you know how to do the work safely. And B's example, I don't know if your dad was doing something wrong, but that was a practice that was not done correctly. And there's plenty of them that even when you're trying your best to be safe, life can happen. So not only equipment, but safe practices. Another key example is things like reporting accidents and near misses, which is an almost, where people can learn from what happened and try to make safety concerns better. And the other part is continuous safety education. Everybody hates it. Oh, it's boring. I don't want to watch a safety video. This is stupid. I mean, I've heard them all. But it is a responsibility for everybody to have that continuous safety training, especially in hazardous fields. So it's a big deal. And again, to Bridget's comment, that family's life was changed forever. You know, that person's not there. They weren't there to help and support and earn money and have kids or whatever that was that time of life provided. It's tragic. And it's, you know, things happen even when you're trying hard. But if you're not trying hard, and like I think it was B that said, if you're lax, you know, that's just an invitation for disaster. So good thoughts on that. Now let's turn to something more interesting.
Okay.
Did you guys, yeah, which is you leaving anytime, right? You look, the refrigerator is more interesting than we are, right?
I was turning to something else.
Oh, okay, there you go. Thanks, Scott, for that. We appreciate your humor. We really do.
Yeah, all right.
And I would never tell a lie. And I love the light mood tonight. That works. You guys started it out right, and I'm just trying to capitalize on it. So, motivation. I don't know about you guys, but I am fascinated by what motivates people. I want to start with the expression that if you don't think the dead come to life, you ought to be here around 5 o'clock. I don't know about you, but sometimes the things that motivate us are really, really interesting. So now, first of all, I want to start with your thoughts on Maslow's pyramid that I included in everything we looked at this week. Some of that was referenced, or different concepts, et cetera, are referenced in what you've read for the week. But what do you think about that pyramid? Does it make sense? And we're going to go and talk about that from going farther.
It did, but I don't have it in front of me right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would pull it up, but every time I've done that before, it tends to be very problematic on Google Plus. So I've learned by experience not to pull it up here because it tends to be a problem.
How do you spell that name?
Mazlow. And again, if you go back to the best one I found is probably the one that I put in our materials. So if you would go back there, you'll find it there too, Scott. I kind of have it memorized, so I'm not. Go ahead, Jolene.
Oh, I was just going to tell Scott it's on iLearn and.
Yeah, I just
On the
Googled it and I've got
announcement
a couple of versions of
Okay.
it sitting in front of me.
Yeah, there's lots of versions. So, all right. So tell me, hopefully somebody's looked at it before tonight. Maybe your silence tells me that you haven't looked at it yet. So what impressions do you have from that and how it has to deal with motivation?
Well, speaking personally, it's true, and I think it can be summarized in a quick saying that sometimes I hear in my trade, which is, there's not enough money to cause me to work for that guy.
Okay. All right. And how make that connection for us, Scott? Why would that have to do? What would that have to do with motivation?
Well, there's certain people, and there's one of them in my office that I will never do a project with them because all the things that make a job worthwhile for me, which if you look at the pyramid, which is personal satisfaction, accomplishing something, this guy stands in the way of, and he tries to micromanage you to the point of where he doesn't let you use your skills, your abilities, your intellect, your decision making to do anything. He causes people to talk to him 2 or 3 times a day for every decision, and then he wants to know everything that's been done, and he'll often have people do things again because it wasn't to his personal way of liking, even though it would be fine by the customer. Just he didn't like it.
Okay. And the motivation to work for that person is you've got just the opposite. The motivation is not to work for them and to do everything you can to get away from them because of the anti-esteeming behaviors that obviously he uses. So great example. Let's bring this pyramid to life. And in a minute, after some examples, I want to go through it step by step. We'll go through it each level. So other examples that come to mind when you look at this that may apply? Okay, well, let's do that backwards. Let's go through it level by level and maybe some examples will come to mind. So our first level, I hope I'm getting this right, is physiological. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm doing this from memory, so humor me. Listed on that is what?
Food,
Breathing.
shelter, clothing.
Okay. Air.
Food. Sleep.
Okay.
Yeah, basic
All right.
survival.
Okay. And again, there's a reason for the shape, and nobody mentioned sex. I know that's on there. So if you think you can mention that, it's okay. We're not going to talk about it, but you can mention it. It's those basic human needs. If you are hungry, does anything else matter? I mean, I'm not talking about, I need a snack from the vending machine at work. I'm talking about real hunger where you haven't had a meal for a week, or, there are so many people in the world that deal with this. Nothing else matters. And you'll notice that is the widest part of the pyramid, and it's the foundation of the pyramid. All right, so what's the next level up?
Safety.
Okay. All right, so I've got some food. I've got air, I've got water. Okay, what does that mean? Yes, we as human beings, do we want to live out in the open, like a zebra or something in a wildlife area would? We want what?
Shelter.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong. That is on this level, right?
Yep.
Okay, make sure I'm doing this from memory, so you have to test me, make sure I can get it right. So it's safe. I've got shelter. My family is protected.
Mick Jagger said.
Say again?
That's what Mick Jagger said.
Okay.
I have a means to provide for my family.
Okay. I have a means to provide for my family. Absolutely. So I have physiological and I have safety. So, okay, that says, hey, I'm at least protected. Now, we're going to come back in some examples on this one, but let's start with this one. Has anybody ever lived in a neighborhood that was truly unsafe? All right. You want to go ahead and tell us about that one, Sarah?
I lived outside of Chicago. It was north of Chicago, but had a lot of the same problems as you would find in the city, because they would bring people, they kind of just moved people up the shore. And so the neighborhood I lived in was pretty heavy with gangs, and we'd get a lot of shootings and things like that. Unfortunately, one night I was walking up to bed to check on my daughter before I went to sleep, and halfway up the stairs, I hear gunshots outside of my house, because someone was at my neighbor's front door. So yeah, it was scary. I'm not there anymore, thank goodness.
Okay, and what was your thought at the time? You had some food, you were able to at least keep a door shut between you and that, but what was your preoccupying thought?
My preoccupying thought was I needed to make sure my daughter was safe. And
following that, what was it after that? Was it I've got to get out of here?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, maybe not exactly every minute, but I'll bet that was a big part of what you were looking at.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, we're going up the pyramid. You have those bottom ones that are so important. Okay, what's the next level up?
Love and belonging.
Love and belonging.
Okay, so I'm safe, I've got food, I'm not in danger. I want what next? I mean, maybe that's a dog, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a spouse. I don't know what that love and belonging is, but does that make sense that that's next on the pyramid?
I think so.
Yeah, because the first one's very personal about physical needs. The second one expands to those in your immediate circle.
Okay.
Now this one's it's going past just those basic needs of your immediate circle to a little bit deeper meaning to that relationship.
Okay. All right. Very good. Other thoughts on the love and belonging?
Well, we need to feel loved, and we need to feel like we belong before we can, get the next step up, because, you can only go so far on what you think of yourself. If you're not seeing what you think of yourself in other people, if you don't feel like other people are seeing in you what you think that you are, then your next level, which is esteem, isn't very high, because you think that you have a skewed or wrong version of yourself, or you just don't think that you're worth a lot if nobody else thinks that you're worth a lot.
Okay, thank you, B. And I would argue that if people really do think the world of themselves, they really won't get to that true level of happiness. They're going to stop here, because even if they think they're, the greatest thing on earth, it's not going to be real. It's going to be artificial. Okay, other thoughts on this love and belonging? Jolene, you are going to add something, I think.
No, I didn't have anything.
Oh, okay.
Must have been thinking too loud.
Okay. Lara, anything?
Not much, just that that's a basic human need, and that's the reason why we're put into families. And even at work can be like a family atmosphere. So if you really cannot connect with anyone there, you just won't be happy.
Okay, very good. All right. B gave us the next one, which is esteem or self-esteem, or again, you're getting to the taller part of the pyramid. Esteem is what? And let's talk about some examples.
How you feel about yourself?
Okay. All right. What else? Thank you for that, sir.
Our society right now seems to be kind of infatuated with this self-identification. We feel that we need to be identified as something, and people go to these drastic measures of, just psychological measures to think, how is the world going to view me? And that they put a high emphasis on that. So I think that part of the pyramid is kind of exemplified in our modern culture.
Okay. All right. And it is, and I would also say, B, I think that's a great point. I think the tricky part is, how can we make that esteem genuine? Because I think what you're talking about is at least partially artificial. Am I correct?
Yes, yeah, partially artificial. And then if we talk about the workplace, a lot of people want to see, a lot of people probably feel like they're a cog in the corporate machine, and
Mhm.
they want to know that they're an integral part. So I think
Okay.
from an employer standpoint, an employer needs to help that's kind of some of our readings this week has been, how can we help employees feel, have some autonomy, have some ownership, some investment in the way they do their work. So.
Okay. Thank you. Excellent comment. I would call that organizational esteem. You're part of something, you belong, you're part of that organization family, you contribute. I mean, those are great thoughts. Other thoughts on the esteem level and what goes with that?
Well, I kind of have a question. I have this pulled up on my second monitor. So how does respect of others, your respect of other people kind of tie into that? I can see how you being respected by others can be part of that, but I don't necessarily understand.
That is an excellent comment, Soren. What do you guys think? I've got an answer, but let's see if we get everybody else first.
I think respect for others goes hand in hand with you recognizing the value of other people. If your self-esteem is driven by what others think of you, you're going to be chasing your tail forever, looking for someone else's measurement
approval.
Of you.
Yeah,
esteem has to come from within, and a confidence and acknowledgement that, hey, you know what, I am worth something, and I did good here. And I don't give a rat's keister what other people really think of me. I know when I've done the right things, and I know when I've done good, and I just can't work that way. There was that great scene from the movie Rudy where he quits the football team, and he's standing there, and the guy from the school who works there comes up, and I wanted to do this for my dad, and he just says, you're 5 foot nothing, 100 and nothing, and when you walk out of here, you're going to have a degree from the University of Notre Dame, and if that doesn't speak to you, there's nothing you can do that can bring yourself. He's telling them that your motivation and your self-respect comes from inside, not from what other people bring, think of you.
Very good, Scott. Other thoughts, anyone?
Yeah, I think that respect of others kind of goes back to that organizational esteem, because when you're on a team, not only do you have to respect yourself and your accomplishments, but the rest of the people on that team with you.
Okay.
To work efficiently, I think.
Okay. Others?
I think it falls under. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. I think it falls under esteem too, because it says something about who you surround yourself with.
Okay.
And if it's people that you can respect, then that helps with your self-esteem.
Okay, very good. Bridget, were you
with a bunch of losers?
Oh. Right, absolutely. Bridget, were you going to add something? Okay.
Lara was.
Okay. Lara, go ahead. Yes, sorry.
There should be like a level of humility mixed in with self-esteem. There's confidence and there's self-esteem, and confidence, I think you depend on others maybe, and self-esteem should come from within. And I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but I just think you need to be humble as well in order to be genuinely have self-esteem.
Okay. And those are all excellent comments. I would add, Soren, one more thing is that I think when you feel good about yourself, some of the things in this pyramid allow you to give. And if you feel okay about yourself, then you can help serve and give to others. So I think esteem, it doesn't necessarily mean that your colleagues all think you're wonderful and they love you. It's just that you feel good enough about yourself to serve others and to provide goodness for them. And I think that can be a huge win or a huge issue when it comes to this. I think it's one of those that says, about myself, I'm going to help you feel good about yourself. And so it helps because you're giving as well as receiving. So do those comments kind of help a little bit, Soren?
Yeah, that definitely does clarify it.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the top level. I'm not missing any, am I?
No.
Okay, and the top level is self-actualization. And that in English means what?
Isn't that when you're motivated from within?
Okay, very good. That's part of it. What else?
Recognition of who you really are and what you
Okay.
really are and what your motivations are.
Okay. Here's an example I would use. Have you ever had a time in your life when you realized exactly who you were? A son or daughter of Heavenly Father, someone that had worth. You felt like despite your trials and challenges, you were doing things that were beneficial to mankind, whether it was your own small group of people or a bigger group of that. And you just felt like Heavenly Father was pleased with you, and you were pleased with the things that you'd done, not in an egotistical way, and that humility is very much a part of that. But I love the word self-actualized, because it's like you've made it, things are good, things are working. And again, it doesn't mean everything's going along perfect in life, because I don't know anybody that ever has that. By the time one thing gets good, something else breaks. So it's not a, everything's perfect and my world is nothing wrong with it. It doesn't mean that at all. It just can mean that, hey, you know what? Things are going well. I'm pleased. I'm happy. If I go back, I've got food, I've got shelter, I've got people that love me and care about me. I'm able to contribute. I feel good about myself, and I'm motivated to stay kind of at the top of that pyramid. Make sense? Not make sense? What do you guys think?
It kind of makes me think back to when I was in Pathway and we had to take the Book of Mormon class 1 and 2. And I've studied my scriptures. I've read the Book of Mormon like 20 times. But to study on that level that we had to in there, like for half an hour a day or a full hour a day, and to study in the depth that we had to, I've never felt more spiritual in my whole life. And it just opened up so many other things in my life, made me realize things and appreciate things. And it was just kind of an amazing experience to keep that level of spirituality. And I'd love to say I've kept it since, but I have to read all this stuff. And
So you're saying because of my class, you're not spiritual, right?
there's a lot of material this week.
Oh, I love that, Lara. Thank you. You brought another smile to my face. Okay, but your point is well taken, is that I get that. Okay. And again, I don't know if there's any magic formula to get you there or get me there. And how often do you stay on the top of that pyramid? Here's the next question that's important.
Usually not very long before you have to start climbing your way back up.
And why is that, Lara?
It just requires so much work and time and effort.
Okay. All right. Now, anybody in here a fan of the game Jenga?
Yeah.
Okay. This pyramid is somewhat like that, because guess what can happen? So you're up there in self-actualization land, and the water pipe in your basement breaks and floods the basement. Okay. Where are you now?
Back down to safety.
Okay. And you're back down there somewhere. And you know what? I'm sorry. You can feel everything's going great, but life happened to you, and all of a sudden you're back down in the you're going along just fine, and you lose your job. Where does that put you?
Down at the bottom of the pyramid.
Okay, you're down there, I don't know, well, level 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, you're down there. The last thought is, let's go back and, get all those perfect things going. You got to go back and repair the bottom of that pyramid, for lack of a better term. Okay, and that's why I love the pyramid. It's visual. You've got to have those ones at the bottom. They're the biggest ones. It's not the ones at the top that are the biggest. If that foundation is gone, like the Jenga game, you pull that piece out, and the pyramid collapses, where do you have to go? You got to start at the very beginning to rebuild it. And sometimes that first level comes back quickly. If you think of this, think of a situation where a divorce happens, and let's say it's not a pleasant divorce. Most aren't. And you've got a family member that needs to take kids and go live with a parent or something like that. And all of that is you know what? I've got to get things back to safety. And then I want to make sure I've got, the kids in school. I mean, you can just kind of picture what happens with that. And sometimes it can take years for it to get to the top of that. And some people never get there. That whole esteem thing, if you don't have self-esteem, and we all know people that haven't, can that keep you from getting there at all? At least I think it can.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
maybe that's us. Go ahead.
Seems to me that, our life is a series of moving back and forth between these various steps. We're putting our fingers in the dike, constantly moving about to fix, repair, reinforce, rebuild different areas. And, it can be a matter of moments from one step to the other. As you say, you might be having a great family home evening and you're up at the top of the pyramid and the water pipe breaks, or, a tree falls through the window, or whatever it is, doesn't matter.
Yep.
Each day is filled with any number of steps up and down on this thing.
Okay, very good, Scott. Thank you. And here's the thing I want to look at. I don't want to give the, if life's not perfect, it's not worth living or something else like that. I would argue we're further up that pyramid than we think we are sometimes. I really do think there's times that we're better off than we give ourselves credit. And it's kind of like that looking back we talked about at the beginning. It's important to realize that, I'm doing okay. We're making it through things. We're making the difficult things more bearable. It's not perfect. It's not where it needs to be, but I'm still making progress. But if I look at that pyramid with Maslow, it says, hey, I'm motivated by certain things. I can't skip those. Most people don't have the luxury of living naked on the side of the road and being self-actualized. It just, people may think it happens, but it doesn't happen that way. So it's important to look at that and understand where people are and what we can do to help them. Now let's twist that around. You're a leader in an organization or in an HR function or whatever. What does this tell you about your team and the people that work for you?
Well, I think as a leader, you have to realize that your team's all going to be at different steps of that pyramid, and that you have to be able to work with all of them to build them up to the top. But they're probably not all going to be there at the same time.
Okay, very good. Absolutely, Sarah. Thank you. Other thoughts on what this means and how we apply it?
Well, it means you might have a bunch of nutcases working for you, and your job is to try and keep them all pulled together through all the various things going on in their life. And I don't mean nutcases in a bad way. I just, we're all basket cases at one point or another. And leaders, no part of our life is an island. Nobody has problems at home and leaves them at home. They bring them with them. So every day, everybody that walks into your office, onto your job, or, you never know really what you're going to get that day. Yeah. I mean, you have a pretty good idea, but, things going on in their life below the surface that you don't see, you just, I guess, have to be better attuned to start recognizing things that are different and know that maybe something's going on that needs attention.
Okay. All right. I have a coworker right now that sold her home and is looking in the process of buying one. This is a very stable, normal, everything's fine, family, kids. That home sold. She moved out. They haven't found another one. They're living in, again, it's not exactly a refugee camp, but they're living in two family trailers on somebody's property until that home is found, et cetera. And it's, it's hard to be your normal self when you have to do that, and they've got a good chunk of little money in their hand. They're going to be fine. They're going to buy another house. They're going to put all that. But again, their issue is that they've gone down to the bottom of the pyramid and they're trying to work themselves back up. And it can change in a heartbeat. It can change with a traffic accident. It can change with an illness. It can change with just normal life. It doesn't have to be, as Scott said, the tree through the window. It can just happen. And I think that's part of the beauty of mortality, is that we have to overcome these. And there's two visuals I'd like to give you. One is an obstacle course. This life is an obstacle course. You've got to work your way through, over, around, and it's continual testing and challenging. And if you lay that next to Maslow's pyramid, I think that's interesting to see what keeps people going. The second thing is the visual of someone that has given up. I always worry about people like that. I don't worry about people failing, but I worry about people that have given up. Any comments on that from anybody? Is that one of the things that comes across your mind on this whole Maslow thing?
Well, I think about it personally.
Okay.
I mean, I got a lot of challenges and things going on, and I can honestly say there sometimes isn't a day goes by when I don't have the thought of why bother.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Other thoughts? Thank you, Scott, for sharing that.
I think sometimes as a leader, it's kind of a balancing act. You know, how far into people's lives do you go to be aware of what you need to be aware of, but not to invade their personal space. Actually, just tonight, I was approached by one of my people, and she told me that she was having a couple problems, and I would have never known because of just the person that she is, and she puts on that facade, that outward appearance that everything's fine, and but she confided in me that things weren't actually all that great for her at the time, and that it kind of blindsided me to the point where it's like, oh well, what could I have been doing earlier to help you out with what's going on? So it's kind of an interesting balance that you have to try to make it so you're there, but you're not too much.
Okay. Excellent observation, Soren. Thank you. All right. Other thoughts?
So do you think there's a...
All right. So let me ask this question. Oh, no. Go ahead, Sarah. Sorry.
Okay. So I think there's a triangle for your personal life, and I think there's also a triangle for work. Because I know, like, one of our bosses, he's a really good motivator. But he is aware of each individual's, triangle, to lack of a better term. But there's also a team.
Okay.
And where the team is moving together that he's very aware of.
Okay. Excellent comment.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We've got only a couple of minutes left, so let me ask my so what question. In the big picture, standing back, what does this mean? Why do we care? Whether it's safety or motivation, so what does this matter in our work or personal lives?
If you feel good about yourself, you're more likely to have a good experience at home and at work. So, if you're to the point where everything's kind of going good, you're able to perform at the best of your ability in whatever you're doing. And that helps the company out, and that helps, long-term health issues, and it helps everything out, mentally, physically, psychologically, spiritually, even when you're on top of it and you have all of those things that you need.
Okay, very good, Soren. Thank you. All right, somebody's getting ready for dinner, so we better hurry up and end this. So,
what are we having?
Yeah, I'm in. So, what else?
It seems to me the curious thing is that the self-actualization happens when you quit focusing on yourself, and you do as the Lord would have us do, which is serve others and think about others and deal with those things, because that's where true happiness is going to come. That's where your inner potential is fulfilled, and the meaning for everything when you step out and quit thinking about worrying about yourself.
Okay, Scott, exceptional counsel there, and you know what? Truth is truth, and if the gospel has it or Maslow's pyramid has it, it's still all true. So very good observation. One or two more thoughts from everybody?
So one thing I've learned is when I think things going well, to continue to grow. I learned this when I was trying to get out of that environment I was living in. But everything else in my life was going well, and that's when I was able to go back and find out what needed to be changed to make it even stronger. And so it was a personal option to, change that and go back down the ladder to work back up to make it a stronger foundation.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Sarah. One more comment so we can get to dinner.
Well, speaking of ladders, if you want to learn how to walk your ladder, let me know.
All right. If you need to, you guys can hang out afterwards and we can have a visual. If you fall, I don't want to have to take credit for that. So.
Well, it doesn't work. It only works well with the old wooden ladders. The new fiberglass ones, it doesn't work so well.
There you go.
They're too flexible.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for a great discussion tonight. I appreciate it. I think we had some good conversations, and hopefully those that are watching will appreciate the humor. I know I did. And who was that for dinner, by the way? We have to know. And what are you having?
I think that was my sister calling her cats for bedtime dinner.
Oh. All right. That's even better. Yeah.
Yeah,
on that note, we're going to call. Okay. Well, on that note, we're going to call it a night. Okay. You guys are awesome. Thanks for the participation and the laughs tonight. I personally appreciated them. And you guys have a great night. We'll see you next week. Should be back on Wednesday next week.
One last thing, if people.
Oh yes.
If people want to kick YouTube or search Google, however you want to do it, just search The Office Double Jeopardy. It's one of my favorite episodes where Michael Scott actually hits Meredith on company property with company property. It's a hilarious bit about, if you ever seen The Office, you know what I'm talking about. But if you want to laugh, just look it up. The Office Double Jeopardy.
There you go.
Pretty good clip.
All right. We appreciate that. A good office clip is always a good way to end the evening. So thanks everybody. We will see you guys next week. Oh, by the way, in case you've forgotten, this is week 8. Monday is our next Doohickeys paper. I hope everybody remembers that.
We have one more week. You just
no, I'm sorry. No, we have, this is it. It's due next Monday, end of week 8.
Okay.
5, 8, 11, and 14. I'm sorry.
That's kind of how we did it last time. It all came together.
Okay, there you go. Then you're good. It's all that motivation thing.
Yeah, I'm motivated.
There you go. And that's a fear thing. So it's down to the bottom of the pyramid. You got to get it done, right?
I'm at the bottom now.
Okay. Sorry, Lara. I didn't mean to ruin your day or your week or whatever the case might be.
Okay.
All right. Thanks everybody for a great night.
Right.
Okay, bye.
All right. Bye-bye.